Okay, it's into the 2 o'clock turn, just on 2:20 p.m. And most of the action has been on the far right, where the light cavalry has moved out. French heavy starting to cross the Elbe to shift probably into the centre here. I think I'm going to bring the heavies out to confront those Austrians. There is this Austrian cavalry out in the centre, Austrian light cavalry out on the right. The French have cavalry superiority out on the right, so they're now ready to, I think, take on those Austrians. There's not much French infantry out in this whole right sector, so we're really relying on that cavalry to do a lot of work. Elsewhere, it's been pretty quiet. A few assaults in the centre, which leaned towards the Austrians. Out on the far left, the Russians are a bit exhausted after pocketing those members of the 43rd. They've pretty much slowed down their assaults. The Prussians are no longer getting any advances. And it's become very static along here. It has been for quite some time. So that's it. That's the situation at the end of the 2 o'clock turn, just heading into 2:20 p.m. Okay, we're now at the end of the 1:20 p.m. turn. And this turn saw some activity out on the right here. The French light cavalry engaged that left wing of the Austrian force and routed some of their cavalry, forced some of the infantry and artillery into square, but without any infantry support out here. There's relatively little that the French could do to follow up. As I said, some disorder, routed unit behind the lines, but then they just had to pull back as Austrian cavalry is moving up on the right-hand side there. At the centre, some more Austrian assaults. This time they've started to move through. You can see here these are Austrians moving through the outskirts, beginning to punch those little holes in the French lines. I think this was a provincial troop here, which was forced back during the assault. And the Austrians have captured redoubt number 4. So the French still hold redoubt number 3 up here barely. They've captured redoubt number 2, and redoubt number 1 out on the far left is isolated. Now the Russians have moved up against this bridge on the river here, but the French have unlimited their guns and are now causing a lot of damage among those Russian units. So I don't think the Russians really want to hang around this area. I was hoping they could sort of defend this bridge, prevent the French heavy cavalry from crossing, but they are losing a lot of increments just sitting there, subject to that artillery fire. Elsewhere, just this continued exchange of fire along here, causing some light losses, but nothing too strong. And that's about it. We're about on the 2:40 p.m. turn. Okay, we're at the end of the 2:40 p.m. turn. It is just on 3 p.m. and this releases all those other Allied forces behind the lines. A lot more Allied reinforcements coming on. There are a few developments this turn. Out on the left, the Russians finally assaulted redoubt number 1 and were hugely successful. So they've captured that. They've captured redoubt 2. The Prussians, again, launched an assault on redoubt 3. They've just been leaving it there and pushing the Allies back. And having done that, isolated the redoubt. They come in from behind and successfully assault that. Redoubt number 4 is captured, which leaves redoubt. Where is redoubt number 5? That is for redoubt number 5 here, which is pretty well protected by this cavalry on the right. And, well, some artillery behind the lines. Not too well defended, but there are no Austrians really in this area. These Austrians over here were held up by a failed assault near Holzhof. Pretty quiet out on the right this turn. Quite a few good rally rolls by the Allies behind the line, so they'll have some forces recovering, moving up. Again, the Austrians are pushing in. Actually, some of their assaults didn't go too well. They're trying to assault French 23rd Infantry Division on the outskirts of the town on the south here. No having some success out on the right. These are some Austrians who succeeded. They've cleared out the Allies from this area, so you can see this is really the front line of the Allied defences along here, with the scattered, spread out 23rd Division. Not many provincials left in the area. Out on the left, the Prussians causing some hits on the 43rd, 44th Division defenders in this area. French artillery continuing to hurt the Russians, and the Guard now arriving in the new town. So this brings us to the 3 p.m. turn. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm whinging, but I'm just lacking the willpower to continue with this, and I think I'm going to wrap it up here. It's becoming just a real struggle to get through the turns. It's very messy all over the place now. As more and more troops coming on board, there's more to manage. I'm not a big fan of cavalry engagements. They're a bit of a headache. I'm constantly reading through the rules and the procedures for that. Not quite grasping still, after so many hours of battle, the pros and cons of column versus line and so forth. So that's just not really enjoyable. And then all the different terrain effects that I'm constantly having to look carefully at and strain and struggle over. So look, I'm going to say that I'm going to end the battle here, and I'm going to say it's certainly leaning, I think, in the Allies' favour. So just wrapping up the situation, I mean, the avant-garde, they did render the fight. A lot of them routed. Those units that were of acceptable strength, they routed. They're all now down to 1 to 2 increments. There are some remnants of this French division in here in square, out of command, isolated. Having said that, the Russians now are quite heavily reduced. They did capture that first redoubt just at the end there. But they've mostly cleared the French out from this whole eastern area of Dresden. You can see the French have really been pushed right back to the outskirts. I kind of lost interest in the Prussians here, as it was a grind. I could have sort of activated them to renew their assaults on those French provincials. They have terrible morale, 33s, 34s around there. And they don't stand up to the assaults too well. The Prussians are also still in relatively good order, not too many increments lost among them. The French still hold the palace, but with only 1 increment left, so that will probably fall pretty quickly. And then further around, you can see a long wave of reinforcements coming up. And the 23rd Division already beginning to crack in places and lose some ground, losing increments. The Austrians are now bringing up their artillery. The Prussian artillery just off to the left here is coming up to the front line. Further to the right, all this French cavalry is just a headache. Maybe this would be a good place for the part of the Guard to move up into. They've recently arrived. I've just placed them in the new town for the time being. They could go anywhere. They could go off to the left, the south, the right. But at this stage, at 3 p.m, as I said, the Allies have captured 4 of the 5 redoubts, and I really think it's just a matter of time before they capture that 5th one. Again, with all their reinforcements coming on. As I said, the Imperial Guard could fight back. I'm sure they'll do very well. It's going to be a long grind in that general order terrain. It'll end up looking like this all over the place. Very messy and hard to keep track of. So there you go. That's La Bataille de Dresde. That's playthrough on the 26th of August up until 3 p.m.